Standing at the White House, US President Donald Trump struck a defiant yet confident tone as he looked back on his electoral win and ahead to what he cast as one of the most consequential rounds of diplomacy in decades. He opened with a reminder of the numbers that, in his view, gave him a clear mandate to pursue his agenda. Thousands and thousands. We got 2,500. They got 525. It was a landslide, Trump declared. He added that this outcome, in his mind, gave him unambiguous authority to set the course for the country. It was one of the greatest victories ever, and it was a mandate to do what we're doing. He used that moment to pivot quickly to the subject he clearly wanted to highlight most, a potential breakthrough in Middle East diplomacy. The president pointed to what he described as painstaking but promising talks now underway, talks that he said had the potential to end decades of conflict that have claimed countless lives. We are very close to making a deal on the Middle East that will bring peace to the Middle East, Trump said. He framed it not as an abstract policy goal, but as an historic mission to halt cycles of bloodshed. After all of these years of millions and millions, tens of millions of people being killed, there's a chance to bring peace to the Middle East. For a president whose first term was defined by turbulent relations abroad and partisan battles at home, the message was clear. This second term, he argued, could deliver a legacy of diplomacy. He noted that progress was not limited to the Middle East. In addition to that, I made 7 other deals and they're great, he said, hinting at a series of other agreements without going into detail. Then the president turned to one of the world's most brutal ongoing conflicts, the war in Ukraine. In a moment that conveyed both sorrow and frustration, he cited grim statistics from recent fighting. Last week, 7,812 people were killed, soldiers, mostly soldiers, Trump said, shaking his head. He characterized the conflict as a tragedy that he had expected would be easier to resolve. I thought that would have been one of the easy ones. I get along very well with Putin, and I thought that would have been an easy one to settle, but it's turned out to be maybe tougher than the Middle East. The line was both an expression of disappointment and an implicit appeal for renewed diplomatic engagement. He closed that passage on a cautious note. We'll see what happens with the Middle East. When a reporter shifted the focus to domestic policy, specifically the ongoing fentanyl crisis, particularly along the northern border, the president was candid. No, it's not over. I think it's never going to be over, frankly, he said. But he quickly gave credit where he felt it was due. Canada's worked hard and they've done a much better job than in the past. He underscored that joint efforts with both Canada and Mexico had significantly reduced the influx of the deadly synthetic opioid across America's borders. We have very few people coming in through our southern border too. We've worked with Canada and we've worked with Mexico, so we've made it a lot better. Then came a line that blended empathy with alarm. Any is too much. He said law enforcement efforts had driven the number of fentanyl seizures crossing the US border down. We've gotten it down. It's down substantially. It's less than 1%, but it's still too much. The statement summed up a theme that ran through his remarks, that progress was never enough when human lives were at stake. Any amount is too much. So we've gotten it down, he stressed again. Standing beside him, Prime Minister Mark Carney added in his own brief comment that Canada remained committed to stamping out the flow. We have to stamp it out. The discussion then turned to trade, specifically the future of the United States-Mexico-Canada agreement, the successor to NAFTA, which Trump had renegotiated during his first term. Asked whether both leaders were committed to revisiting the pact, Trump stressed pragmatism. We can renegotiate it, and that would be good, or we can just do different deals. We're allowed to do different deals if we want. We might make deals that are better for the individual countries. His bottom line message was that he was less concerned with sticking to a particular framework than with getting the most favourable outcome for both nations. I don't care. I want to make whatever the best deal is for this country, and also very much with Canada in mind. The Canadian leader nodded, signalling alignment while emphasising that both economies would benefit from fair competition and modernised rules. The geopolitical focus shifted eastward as a journalist asked what more Washington and Ottawa could do together to counter China. Trump's answer highlighted not containment or confrontation, but economic competitiveness. You have to be able to compete. They're a great competitor, and Mark and I both know that, and you have to be able to compete. He argued that both the US and Canada possess significant advantages in technology, resources and talent that can allow them to thrive even as Beijing expands its reach. We have big advantages over China for lots of different reasons, and I think we're doing very well with China. He also made a point of personal rapport. I get along very well with President Xi. I'm going to be meeting him in a few weeks, as you know. I'll be meeting him in South Korea. But he returned to his main argument: you have to be able to compete to do well with China. If you can't compete, you're not going to do well with China. Turning to his counterpart, he added a compliment: Canada is very competitive. I can tell you that Canada is a very competitive country, and I think Canada's done very well over the years with China. Carney, smiling, added in support: we've done well, but we'll do better together on that. Another reporter raised the most delicate question of the day: what assurances Washington could give Arab partners that Israel would not resume offensive military operations once the current hostages are released. Trump replied by underscoring Washington's leverage and commitment. Once this deal happens, if it does happen, we are going to do everything possible. We have a lot of power, and we're going to do everything possible to make sure everybody adheres to the deal. His words captured both the fragility of the moment and the political stakes. The White House hopes a lasting ceasefire and political framework can be put in place, but negotiators warn that spoilers on all sides remain. Attention then shifted back home as questions turned to travel chaos and the federal shutdown. The president did not mince words. They're all Democrat delays. There are delays at the airport. That's standard. He insisted that a straightforward path to funding the government was being blocked for political reasons. Every day we put forth a bill, just a continuation. It's a very simple thing to sign and very simple to do. Trump went on to describe the opposition party as fractured and leaderless. He singled out several figures for scorn in remarks that were as personal as they were political. He said, I look at people with very low IQs like Crockett. This woman, Crockett, she's a low IQ individual. I look at AOC talking about how if they want to negotiate, they can come to my office. She's not in that position to do that. And who the hell is she to say that? He added, then I watch Nancy Pelosi not knowing what to do. I watch their leadership. Look, Schumer is petrified of a primary because he's not going to win. Schumer's incapable of making a deal. The remarks underlined his effort to paint the opposition as disorganized while portraying himself as ready to compromise for the good of the country. Over the course of nearly an hour, the president painted a picture of a world in flux, from the war in Ukraine to the fragile Middle East truce talks, from the fentanyl emergency to the strategic rivalry with China, and of a leader determined to harness what he sees as his electoral mandate to steer events toward resolution. Yet the style in which he did so was unmistakably combative, veering from policy prescriptions to stinging personal attacks, revealing both the confidence and the contentiousness that continue to define his political persona. Observers noted that the president's remarks reflected a familiar pattern: assert bold ambitions, cite statistics to demonstrate urgency or success, and cast blame on opponents for obstacles at home and abroad. It was a performance aimed as much at consolidating his political base as at sending signals to allies and adversaries. As the United States heads deeper into a season of fraught negotiations with its own Congress, with allies like Canada, with rivals like China, and with conflict-torn regions such as Gaza and Ukraine, the administration's strategy will be tested not only by external events, but also by internal political will. The president has staked his case on the argument that his resounding election victory authorizes bold moves. His critics counter that boldness must be matched by steadiness and compromise. For now, the words that echoed most clearly from the White House podium were those that combined both ambition and caution. There's a chance to bring peace to the Middle East. Any amount of fentanyl is too much. We'll see what happens with the Middle East.